All right. We are live.
I've just noticed the room is called Jaran time.
It's Jaren time.
Yay.
So we'll wait for a little bit while people kind of filter in.
Sounds good.
And
Unfortunately, the pigeon's hooing.
oh,
What's wrong? You want to be in the stream?
she's a good girl.
I guess. Just mad the light is on.
All right, great. I just checked that we are live.
Good, good.
Okay, and then I'm gonna post.
How do we know?
Word. Cool.
1 cup jam.
Is that...
I just opened up a Discord and got 1 cup jam.
All right. We should have some people filtering in, but I guess I will kick us off.
Okay.
All right. Hi, everybody who is joining the stream, or people who are soon to be joining the stream or watching this recording. My name is CJ, and I am one of the 4 organizers of Let's Games Tokyo, which is a site in Roppongi, Tokyo, that hosts Global Game Jam every year since 2020, actually. So this is going to be our 6th year running. So Let's Games Tokyo is happening this next weekend, and we are currently a entirely self-funded site, so sales from the tickets go directly to supporting our supporting snacks and other really cool things that are happening in the jam. And it is a really fun vibe. The organizers and the volunteers work very hard to make it a fun vibe. So to those of you who are joining the jam this weekend, I'm really looking forward to seeing you. And for those of you who are taking your time to do mentorship and volunteer, I really appreciate your time, because you're basically what makes this site. So allow me to introduce to you Jaren, a friend and co-dev of a game that we put together last year called Help, I've Been Cursed with a Bubble Butt. Jared is responsible for some of those illustrations, and it's so good. It's so good. And she's a excellent artist. Has been doing game jams for a really long time, and is excellent at working together with teams of varying skill and expertise. So she is going to be our mentor on art. So last weekend we had Connie, who was our mentor in audio. Jaren is our mentor in art. So without further ado, I will allow Jaren to take the stage.
Thank you very much, CJ. So I'm a bit nervous. I've never done a talk like this before. I would like to start by saying it will be quite basic. It's going to be very basic, very introductory. Maybe you are an artist or an illustrator who has never made a game before, or you've never considered that how to put your art into a game, or how does that happen? So I would like to cover the extreme basics today of game art and actually I can go to the next slide. So game art for games. Can you do it? Yes, you can. Everyone can. So let's see the basics to getting started. I'm terribly sorry if you can hear cooing and hooing in the background. My pigeon is being territorial today.
She's so cute.
Yes. So yes, today's talk. I'll be covering the. Oh, I'll be. Oops. Thank you. I'll be covering the basics of different art styles and types for video games and the software and hardware to create art for video games. I've said video games because I'll mainly be focusing on video games rather than board games or analog games. Uh, I'd like to discuss the role of the artist or designer in the team. I've put artist and designer. Those terms can be interchangeable. You, especially in Japan, designer is actually the word that we use in the games industry in Japan rather than artist. But of course, artist is very broad and it's what we are. And finally, I want to show how we can get our art ready for the game. I've put in one of my own processes for a game jam that I did in 2021. So I'd like to walk you through that together. So, just a quick introduction. CJ's already introduced me. I'm Ceren. I'm originally from the UK and I have a Turkish background, hence my name. I've lived in Tokyo since 2014. I moved here straight out of university. So it's been about 11 years now. In my time in Japan, I worked on several games and animation as a freelancer. I've spent most of my time in Japan as a freelancer, just getting projects and building up my name. Last role was as a creative web designer in house. This is actually my 10th global game jam. I had to go back and check how many global game jams I've done. So the first one I ever did was when I was still in university, and yeah, this is my decade in
Holy
jams.
shit!
I
Wow.
know, I know. I was very surprised, but it's been a long time. And yeah, fun fact, I graduated from the University of Abertay Dundee in Scotland with a master's degree in video game development. So that's always a fun thing to tell people I have a master's in. Below are some titles that I've worked on with CJ by my side and Kyle on writing. We created Help, I've Been Cursed with a Bubble Butt, that was released last year. We created it in the Global Game Jam last year, so this time last year, and it's available now on itch.io and Steam if you're interested in bodaciousness. Um, Also, other titles that I've worked in for animation and video games. So, you say to me, but Jan, I'm a general artist. I've never made game art. That's fine. It's if you can export as a PNG or an OBJ, we're halfway there. PNG is the transparency we use for 2D art, and OBJ is the file type for 3D models that can be accepted by almost every game engine, I believe. Um, so just to go through the text together, we need images with transparent backgrounds saved as PNGs to layer the images together or tile them side by side so that the code can call upon the images. We need to make sure when we're making art that the images are not too big, as this eats up memory. When I say the images aren't too big, I mean the dimensions of the canvas that you're drawing on. And they can't be too small either because, computer screens and stuff, they'll blow it up and it'll look really grainy and pixelated. I would always say it's good to double check your dimensions with the team to make sure that you are creating them at the right size. And remember, it's always easier to resize down. So when in doubt, always start large canvas, and then shrink it down. If you start small and start zooming in, oh, it's going to be painful to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But you can always start big and then make that thing smaller. And the details look better when you make things smaller. The second thing is animations can be called upon in sprite sheets and other formats. If you don't know what a sprite sheet is, don't worry, we're going to cover it in a bit. Um, it is important to ask your programmer which is best if animation is going to be included. There's so many ways to do the things that we're going to discuss. There's no wrong ways or right ways. It's just important that you communicate with the programmer to make sure that both of you are on the same level and the engine can do it and the programmer can do it and you can do it. I'll be covering communication later as well. 3D images, yes. So 3D models, they are saved and imported into the game engine as a .obj file. You need to consider the topology if you're planning to animate. If you've not created a 3D model before, or if you're just practicing for this jam, topology is the polygons shapes around the 3D model. The best way I can describe it is imagine your body but with lots of X's and crosses and polygons, right? Or I'll use the rabbits that I've placed here for a second. As you can see, the first image of the bunny, this is a great 3D model, but it's not optimized for animation. These triangles are not sitting in a way that would animate or deform very well. The second bunny is quite low poly, quite rudimentary. It's not as impressive as the first bunny, but it is easier to animate. The third bunny is probably the best example of an animatable bunny. You can see around its arms and its legs, there are lots of rings of circles on the topology. This makes deforming better. It's not too important, especially if you're just starting out. I'd rather you have fun and just enjoy building up shapes. But if you are going to animate your 3D model, just keep in mind, you might want to have a clean topology and put in extra polygons where there will be deformities. If you have any questions, I'm giving an extremely basic overview. So if you have any questions about this, feel free to ask me at the end or at the jam.
Also,
Okay.
Jaren,
Yes,
do you mind sending me the link for the 5 most common 3D modeling mistakes for beginners?
absolutely. Shall I send it right now?
Yes, please.
Let me just open it up on a different. It's not letting me copy it while it's in full mode.
That's okay. Never mind. Afterwards is fine. I'm just curious about the links.
Oh, okay. I will absolutely give you all the links after as well, but let me just copy paste this. Where can I put it? Is there a chat in this? Yes.
Yes.
There you go. Okay, I've put the chat in the our group chat thing.
Okay, I got it, and I sent it to the group chat for everybody.
Okay, that's great. And yes, one more thing about 3D models is be careful about how many polygons you use. Polygons are the surfaces on your topology. I'm going to show an example later of a pot that almost killed an MMORPG because it had too many polygons. So remember that the more polygons you have, the more memory it's going to eat, which will make your game run slow and make a very sad programmer. Okay. So designers and artists' role in a team. I know it's a lot of text, but bear with me. Please don't be scared by all of this. It is our job to create a visual identity for the game. I think that's the coolest part, honestly. There might be other artists in the team with you. Be collaborative. If you're the only artist, it's down to you, soldier. But if there's other artists in the team, get together, talk about this, talk about what is in your range of styles. You might have different styles, you might have similar styles. Talk about where you want to explore. I personally use game jams. Sometimes I use jams to explore one new thing. That might be a style, that might be an engine, but I would say 90% I stay within the range of comfort because we only have 48 hours. So keep this in mind as you're learning, as you're doing something, and as you're deciding the style of the art. Um, Personally, I like to reference, once all the ideas are set, I like to reference existing games like, oh, we can make it look like a mix of Undertale and Mega Man, or let's do pixel art. It's good to reference games. Not everyone has a creative mind or can picture things as easily. So try to imagine that it's your job to try and paint a picture of what we can do, and referencing existing games might be good for that. Another thing, if you have the time, remember these are all suggestions. You might not have the time, or you might be able to just skip on ahead with everyone, but you could create a mood board of the style of game that you want to create with everyone and see if everyone is interested in that. Sketching down ideas. I would say this is my own personal way of working, and it's my strongest suit. Is when my team is discussing ideas and bouncing things, I have a pen and paper in my hand or my iPad in hand, and I'm just jotting down and sketching things as my team is talking. Um, as fast as I can, as rough as I can. I might be just drawing things, and there's nothing more exciting than people looking at that and being like, oh, that's amazing, or like that. And it feels good when you can put someone's ideas or thoughts into a drawing. And I find it very motivational, and it's extremely fun watching things come together and the team, working together and you putting that down into an image. Communication with the team. So, it is important to always be discussing with everyone on the team. I would say this time I focused mainly on programmers over our planner types or our audio people. We do need to work with the programmer to make sure we know um, what everyone's limitations are. What are the programmer's limitations? What is the artist's limitations? It's important to make sure everyone has the same page and no one is expecting a lot from someone, or you can't. We have to respect and balance and make sure that the work is equal and timed accordingly as well. I would say, for example, art assets are heavy from the start of the jam, and towards the end of the jam or the end of the creation of the game, it might not be as stressful. But at the start, yes, we need to create a lot of assets for the game.
That's actually something I wanted to ask you about because I have noticed a lot of teams tend to get like really into making beautiful art assets that can never
Yeah,
be implemented.
no,
S-
it, mhm.
So, what's your advice to those artists who are like, yeah, I'm going to make this the most perfect Blender model and it's like everything is going to be perfect and then they get really sad when the programmer's like, I can't put this in the game.
Yeah, it happens more often than you think. That's why I'll be talking about it later as well. But placeholder is very important. I have a slide later on in this that will talk about placeholders for art. So while you are creating this beautiful Blender model, maybe export it when it's a somewhat beautiful model so that there is a version of it. It might be incomplete. It might not be exactly what you want it to be, but it's important not to be too precious during the game jam. You might feel it's a bad representation of your art, but that is not true. Having something is better than having nothing. So, if possible, try to export it or try to have a version of it that might be a placeholder or not quite as beautiful as you want it to be. And once that is created, you can keep working on this model and you can have it beautiful. Again, it's important to communicate with the programmer. Is it possible to implement the more beautiful version at a later time? Yes, but you need to have it done 5 hours before the jam is over. So you got to balance and make sure it is doable and in what time frame. But I would say definitely, and we'll discuss it later, placeholder art is important. Okay. Um, yes, creating art assets for the game is obviously our role in the team. So one of the first things, once the team has decided on their idea, once we've decided the engine and what is going to be created, it's important to create the assets list. You can do this on paper, you can do this digitally on an Excel. Both is okay. I start with paper and then I put it into an Excel. It's important to create a list of assets for the game. For example, a character, an enemy, a background, a projectile. This is very simple. And then let's start with character. So we have character, and then we have to branch out from that. Character jump, character dead, character attack, character sad. We need to make sure that we break down the assets as little as possible. And remember, for example, don't forget the UI. Don't forget a start screen, an end screen if you need one, score. Don't just focus on the elements that are the most exciting or interesting or that will be seen mostly. It can be also important to think about other things if you can spare the time, of course.
I think everyone. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Everyone forgets the how to play the game splash screen, and so you just like get into the game, and people are like, "Wait, what?"
Fair point, because I also forgot and I didn't put it in this slide. So yeah, also please make a how to play screen or an overlay or something, or a piece of paper on your computer that shows you how to play the game. Again, as the artist, it's probably our task to consider these things. And yes, I can't stress enough, the list of assets will be your best friend for the weekend, for the game jam. It will be the thing that makes sure you know what has been created and what hasn't. Things can get messy, things can get confusing. So it's very important to reference it as much as possible. And just from personal experience, the further you break it down, the more manageable it feels. And breaking it down, you can also classify what is urgent and necessary and what might be cut or could be cut, which goes into my next point. I might say this a lot in this talk, but don't be precious. You might have to cut things. It's not what we want. And I know the artist, I know the ego of the artist, and I understand wanting to show everything. And I also understand not wanting to waste your efforts, as we were talking earlier about the beautiful Blender model. But there are a few things. In a AAA company, your work will get cut. In a 48-hour game jam, your work's going to get cut. It's just the nature of creating a game. So try to understand that it's nothing to do with you, but it is important for your own peace of mind and for your own, you know, pushing yourself to make the assets that are important and cutting off the ones that are not as important. It will help you in the long run, I promise. Yes, that also goes to create some placeholder art in case you can't finish the list. It might be possible that you overestimate the list. It's if this is your first jam or your first time creating game art, you might not have a idea of how much you can do in a healthy manner in the 48 hours. But also, you might underestimate yourself. If you finish all the tasks you have on your list, it's time to apply polish. So then you can create that beautiful model and make it even better. So polish refers to when you make the asset even better. Okay. Game engines. I won't spend too long on this. This is the domain of the programmer. However, it is important for us as artists and designers to know what game engine we're going to be working with. There are so many game engines. You might be in a team with a programmer who has only ever used Unity or has only ever used I don't know, RPG Maker, uh, or even Pico 8. They are all different game engines that all cater to different types of styles of games. So Pico 8, you can see, is pixels. Uh, RenPy is a visual novel engine. I don't personally, I'm not sure, but I don't think it can handle 3D graphics. Therefore, everything in RenPy will be 2D. However, uh, Unity or Unreal Engine, which are very common games engines, they can accept both 2D and 3D. So it might be worth checking from the start. I would say it doesn't matter uh, what the programmer's specialty is if you want to challenge yourself. But if the programmer says, I can only work in Pico 8, you might have to only work in pixels. But if the programmer says, I work with Unity or Unreal, or I think Godot as well, there is leeway for the type of art that can be created for the game. So I would check with your programmer on this one.
Yeah, and I'll I'll back you up on the RenPy only being able to utilize 2D assets with one exception,
Mm-hmm.
which is 2D assets that are animated with live 2D. So
Oh,
the way like VTubers, you can actually export those into RenPy to make your characters like move like VTubers.
okay. So using live 2D or spine
Yes,
animation.
yes.
Okay. Do you know if RenPy can accept 3D models or 2D?
No,
Hmm.
uh, I don't.
No
Let me.
problem.
I was gonna say, there's probably some crazy person out there who's like, I made a plugin and now it can accept 3D models. But like in general, I don't think so.
No worries. I was just curious about that. Okay, so let's get into software. Again, I'm focusing on digital art this time. However, if you are an artist who works in an analog medium with paper and pen, that's also okay. Let me explain very quickly. If you can do analog paper drawings for your game, feel free to scan those in, and if you have any of these softwares or free software, or even MS Paint, because MS Paint has recently become quite a good engine, it has leveled up, it has layers now. If you can remove the background layer and make it transparent, you can export as a PNG. If you want to ask me more, feel free. But I'm sorry, today I'll be mainly discussing digital art. So there are lots of software to create video game art. Of course, everyone knows Adobe, the Adobe Suite for Photoshop, Illustrator. Clip Studio Paint is very well known. The iPad, I would say most people are using Procreate these days. Um, we talked a little bit about 2D Live and Spine. Both of those are used for animation, 2D animation, sorry. And Maya and 3D Max and Blender are very common for 3D modeling. And you might come across, if you are more advanced with 3D, you might know Substance Painter, Houdini for VFX and 3D modeling. These are paid softwares, so do not worry. If you have no access to these, don't worry about it at all. You do not need industry standard software to make video games. Yes, it might be required in in-house studio, but we are an in-house 48-hour game jam session, so don't worry about it. Whatever means are available to you will work. I've just made a list of a few of them. I couldn't for example, I can't add Procreate to the list. It is a $10 item. But I have looked at different iPad apps because I know recently iPad is becoming more popular for artists, younger artists. There's Sketchbook. There is Ibis Paint, I believe. Krita is always a classic as well. GIMP is a true loved classic. Blender is the standard for free 3D modeling. There's plenty of tutorials out there. And Figma, which is being used more and more for prototyping and UI design. I've got some links here as well. Would you like them now, or should
Yes.
I? Yeah. Okay. Oops. One moment. Let me.
As Jaren is doing that, the game that uh, Mabbies and I developed, Terra Nova, the initial prototype for the game and the way that the game mechanics functioned was prototyped in Figma. So
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, it was a. Um, I think Figma's really good for prototyping like UI interactions. So if you're like, I don't know what UI to choose, I think it's very helpful.
Hmm. I'm quite new to Figma myself, but I'm very impressed by its abilities, to be honest.
If you have any questions, that's like basically my day-to-day software.
Okay, for Figma related questions, please ask CJ. I will be with you side by side as we ask. Okay, links are good.
They're good. They're in the chat now.
Great. Okay, let's move on. So we've covered a bit about my. There we go. I've covered a bit about software. So very quick on hardware as well. If you are a digital artist, you might have a drawing tablet. It could be a Wacom, it could be a Huon, an XP Pen. There's so many now on the market that are affordable. They are to be attached to a PC as a peripheral, and then you just require digital drawing software like Photoshop, and you can draw on your tablet. You can draw with a mouse. I've known many a teenager who couldn't buy a drawing tablet back in the day who learned how to draw with a mouse. Hey. It is a little uncomfortable. It might take some time to get used to, but I have seen people create really good vector art and pixel art with a mouse. Um, you can also use your phone and iPad. I'm less versed in phones, but with iPads growing in popularity, and even myself switching from Wacom to mainly using my iPad, which I never thought I would do. I was always under the impression that the iPad was a bit behind. But more and more, especially younger people, are switching to iPads with drawing software. You don't need a PC for this. However, I will say the benefits of working on a PC is file management and naming these files. Working with an iPad adds an extra layer of uploading it to a computer and making sure that it's okay to be used in the game. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so types of art for games. Again, this might be very basic for you, but let's just cover all of them. We've got 2D art. I put together a bunch of games that just came to mind, but it's a very, very, very varied field. I'm not talking about the genre of the game, but just that the art is 2D, it's flat. It could be isometric. These could be vector, they could be pixel, illustrative, UI. They might utilize a sprite sheet. Again, I'm going to explain a sprite sheet later, but it's a very wide genre. So I just wanted to take some time to break down some 2D elements. You might look at this and maybe you'll just see character, background, UI. But if you're making your asset list, let's just have a look at, for example, let's look at Doki Doki Literature Club. That's the first one with the three girls. We can see there's three different character models. There's a background, there is a UI text box with a pink overlay dotted. I believe the Monica text is just Monica. So it's just text. Sorry, not just Monica. It's just text.
It's just Monica.
I'm sorry. That was not intentional. And yeah, if you can break down these elements, you can start to think what it is that I need to create for my 2D game. If we look at Candy Crush Saga, that's the candy game on the side, you can see there's, I think there's about 6 different candy drops. And then there's 5 different licorice drops. There's a special ball. And then there's a star. There's 3 stars in different colors. There's a cherry. There's 3-button UI. There's the background. There's the overlay of the grid background. You need to start thinking, how many 2D elements are there that have been layered up to create this game? It will help you in the long run to think about these things as you break down 2D games. Let's cover sprite sheets now. So sprite sheets are used for 2D, especially in older games. They would be used to recount where the character is. So a sprite sheet is one big image. So let's look at this Mario. This is one image. And then there's lots of Marios in different various stages of animation. The programmer will say to the game's code, please reference 3x5. And then this Mario will show up on the screen. And then the next line of code might be, please reference 4x5, 5x5. And the code will start referencing this large image and take each square to create the animation in the code. It might sound a little bit complicated, but the best way to think of it is just one big picture that has lots of little images on it, and then it has latitude and longitude. And the code cannot understand looking at an image and being like, that's Mario. It needs those numbers to count which Mario to choose. So sprite sheets are very, very commonly used in 2D games. Again, it's especially in older games, but they're still being used, and they're a great way to create assets with low memory if you have problems with memory in the game. And it's you can see everything in one image, which is great. The only thing you need to worry about, which I often struggle with, and I have been chastised by programmers with, is to make sure that the sprite sheet is laid out correctly.
Yes.
So this is just one thing to keep in mind. Any questions about sprite sheets? I'm worried I didn't explain it clearly enough. We're good?
Can you give us some common mistakes that you see? Because when you said layout correctly, go a little bit more into that. What pisses off programmers about incorrectly laid out sprite sheets?
There is a few things. The code will be, so of course everything, every sprite sheet will be different and every code will be written differently, but probably the sprite sheet should be the same size for every icon, meaning it'll be, let's say, 6x6. So the sprite sheet must be a grid of 6x6, perfectly aligned. And then you need to put your art, the little Mario has to be perfectly in that 6x6 square. So when the code is referencing it, it will reference it correctly without any movements. Another error that I see from the artist's side, and when I say artist side, I say me, by the way. This is my mistakes, because I have a vendetta with sprite sheets. But anyway, you have to make sure that, for example, if Mario is walking, his foot needs to be in the same exact position, or he needs to be in the right area. Just because the square is 6x6 doesn't mean you can put him at the side of the square. He always has to be centered in the right place. If you have an animation and the first few frames are correct, and then suddenly you might see him jump backwards in the middle of the walk cycle. His placement is wrong, or the code is recalling it wrong, but usually in my case, I've put Mario in the wrong. He might be just a pixel off. So you need to be making sure that it's always pixel perfect in the sprite sheet.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, another one last thing with sprite sheets is you might use them for tiling. This is for backgrounds or for the ground or for cliffs. I've included it in my own example later, but you need to make sure that the tiles do connect to one another correctly in the sprite sheet. You can't have gaps, or if the tiles are different colors, it's very obviously a tile. Okay. All right. Moving on. Pixel art. We've already covered it a little bit with 2D art. If I'm not a pixel artist myself, although I have done it a little bit for Pico 8. There are plenty of resources online that I didn't include in the software section. These are all browser related for creating pixel art and pixel animations. So again, would you like me to link them to you, or would you like them later?
I think we have enough links here to just link them to me later.
Gotcha. Okay. Another thing is, if you are learning, pixel art is a witchcraft I'm not familiar with, but it's a very interesting thing to make things appear as they should in a really small or limited color palette, which is very cool to me. If you want to look more into it, or you want to, I don't recommend using resources for the jam if you are an artist. I understand programmers or audio people might want to do that if there is a lack of an artist on the team. But if you are an artist, feel free to use the resource library to look at how other people have made an item that you might be struggling to make. Again, it's a short jam, it's only 48 hours, so please use all the resources available to you and look at how other people have created it. Don't get stuck too long on how to make a beautiful rock. So animation for 2D. On the left side is sprite sheet frames. So you can see this character that I've made that looks like a cat from Journey. It's only 5 frames. It's technically 6. It's sitting on the first frame twice, but it's a sprite sheet that was exactly the right size, again, like 5 by 6, that was recalled for this animation. So were the blob eggs at the bottom. That's also a sprite sheet where everything is in the correct area, correct layout to be animated within the code, not by myself. On the right side, we've got skeletal animations or rigged animations. So the same egg that you've seen in the sprite sheet, this is not a sprite sheet. This is a squash and stretch that I created in Spine, or was it? No, it wasn't Live 2D, it was Spine. The girl as well, this is similar to VTube. You can see that I created this girl in parts in Photoshop back in the day, and then I combined them and I put a skeleton or a rig inside of her and animated it. And then I exported it as a GIF for, I think it was for a visual novel type game. You can see here in this GIF at the bottom, the spine, this is rigging or skeletal animation. It requires a lot of work, so please keep that in mind if this is something that you are learning or doing for the 48-hour game jam. A lot of frustration, but really cool results. Covering 3D art a little bit as well. Again, you might be using Blender or Maya for this game jam. I highly recommend looking at other or existing resources if you want to create something, or if it's your first time doing 3D modeling and you want to have a look. I already talked about it a little bit. Just keep it in mind that you want to maybe keep things low poly for memory's sake or just for the game jam because we don't have a lot of time, I would also recommend, especially with 3D art or assets, reuse, reuse, reuse. You can reuse the same assets again and again. Just rotate it. Looks great. Nobody will know. It's the same tree again. Um, so yeah. I did say I'd talk about the barrel that exploded an MMORPG. This barrel at the bottom, when Final Fantasy XIV was first released 11, 12 years ago, this barrel contained more polygons than a playable character. And there was a lot of them in the town, and it would crash. So
That's insane.
yes. So when the game was first released, this barrel had an insane amount of faces, an insane amount of polygons. It was the most detailed item in the town, more than the beautiful character faces. And yeah, unfortunately, it slowed down the game immensely. So just make sure less polygon is better, especially for a short time frame like ours. Like this sad.
It was the most perfect barrel, though.
It was the most perfect barrel. I think about him at least once a week.
I'm also thinking about that pigeon too. Look at that low poly little guy.
This little low poly guy. He wishes he had more polygons, but
He does because his eyes are on the top of his
yeah,
head.
yeah. If he had just one more face plane, he would be better. Sorry, buddy. We're playing on the PlayStation 1. So, animation in 3D. It it it's not something again I'm very versed in. If you are coming in this with knowledge of 3D already, that's great into this game jam. If not, it's okay to create a static 3D or animate just the model as a whole. You don't need to rig the skeleton. You can make your model bounce up and down. That's okay too. But if you want a challenge or you want to animate something or learn something this game jam, you might want to consider creating a very, very basic 3D rig for your model. Just if you do this, please keep it simple. You don't have too much time. Make sure the programmers can implement your animations. This is also important. If you are animating, make sure to add areas. We've talked about this in the topology. Make lots and lots of extra polygons in places that will bend, such as knees or elbows, or maybe your neck, so that it doesn't get too creased. Something I've used in the past a long time ago is Mixamo. If you have a 3D object beautifully created and ready, but you don't have time to add a rig or animate it, Mixamo is great for uploading your OBJ files. It automatically rigs it and adds animations such as idle or jump. It might save you some time, but again, I would use Mixamo if you want to focus on creating a good model rather than learn animation in a very short amount of time. Abstract art. I've mainly talked about 2D and 3D art, but abstract art is also its own category. I'm not versed in VFX, unfortunately, but all abstract art is shapes. They're all shapes with mixers or shapes with in-game engines. So if you are a programmer, maybe you might know more than an illustrative artist the capabilities of an engine to run shaders or make things blurry or shiny or anything. So if you are someone who's interested in VFX for games or creating a box that just is super shiny, you might want to look into how to create visual effects in game engines, I should say.
Very cool. I don't know if you know this, but Nabby's is a graphics programmer in his day-to-day
I did
work.
not know that.
Yeah, yeah. So he is very much into this like
Shiny.
graphic shiny programming. He loves procedural stuff.
Yeah, I would say I wish I put it in the slide that I put the most impressive abstract art in my opinion, but I also should have just put one of the nodes for a shader where it's just boxes connected to lines and it's the most, and maths, and that's it. That's it. That's what makes it shiny.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so I've talked about the different types of art in a game. I'm going to go back to our role as an artist in the team. So communicating with the team as an artist. Again, I might be repeating myself. I'm sorry, but you should express your worries and limitations, your own or the programmers. We would hope for a fun and cooperative team, but there might be instances when people overestimate what they can do, or we might be a bit worried about what we can produce in the time. So just keep that channel of communication open. Try to leave your ego at the door and remind yourselves that this is supposed to be a fun and exciting thing. And I promise you, it's better to have something at the end than have an unfinished, unrunnable prototype. If something needs to be cut, it needs to be cut. Sorry, artists. I'm also of the heart of putting my low poly pigeon in the game, but if it's not gonna get in. Don't be too precious about your own art or your own style. Stay collaborative. Try to stay open-minded. Try new things. It's okay to say no if you can't do something that you're being asked of, because if you don't say it from the start, at the end, it's going to be a headache, and we're not going to be able to put it in, or it might leave a sour taste. Or don't. It's okay to let people know, like, I don't think I can do this, or I'll try to do this, but here's a placeholder for now. Yeah, and be honest about your workload and timing. So again, you might have a lot of work to do. You might look at your asset list and be like, I can do this. And then on the last day, you might be like, I can't do any of this, or I'm not going to be able to get this done. It's good to communicate the timing, especially when you're making a game together. The programmers and the artists need to make sure that everything is going in at a reasonable pace. Because if you finish all your assets in the last 5 hours of the game, and then the programmers are sitting around waiting, and then you're like, here you go, the last 5 hours, the programmers are going to be sweating trying to put that all in, and they might not be able to. I've added a link at the bottom. I didn't know where else to put it, but if you are a team of programmers who are lacking an artist, there is also a guide for programmers to creating art for your game. But I'm hoping that everyone will have an artist by their side. Oops. Creating an asset list. Yes, creating a list. It'll help you visualize how much work needs to be done. Good for tracking your progress. Again, grouping priority and necessity. It'll look less scary when you do that, and you can focus on all the important stuff, and then you can move on to the unimportant stuff. Although everything is important, but there is a list of priority, I promise. Compromises, yeah, things will get cut. It's better to create something than not create it at all, and then you can make it look pretty later. Okay, so placeholder versus final dot dot v8 dot png. So this is from a game I created. It's been a very long time. I want to say 2017 or 2016. This was for Rainbow Game Jam, so not Global Game Jam. The very first iteration of this character in our game was this square. This is the humble programmer placeholder art. It just shows where the character will be. If you've ever seen any game in progress from the very early days in Unity or 2D, this is probably what the main character has looked like at some point in its life. After we created the character, I think this, you can see how sketchy this is, how it looks really like rough, right? I must have created it in a few minutes. And then I exported it as a PNG. You can see there's no background, it's a transparent. And it's also the same size as the placeholder art. I must have asked the programmer, what is the dimensions for the character to be? and then I exported it at the correct dimensions to be placed in the game. This is the first art placeholder, I want to say. So say I cannot create the final character, say there's no time because I'm building the UI and the background and whatever else needs to be done. He is the final version that would be placed in the game. However, I did have time. I was able to go back and I was able to create the static version of the character. So we updated the character image to this guy now. He is static, but this was the final version of the character. Because we had time at the end, only then was I able to animate him. And he is the only animated character in the game. All the other NPCs, who are very similar to this guy, they are not animated because we ran out of time. But because he was a top priority, he is the main character, he was the one that was animated. So, this is the process. Okay, it's a little bit boring, but it is important to cover how you give your assets to the team as well. You should decide if you're going to do file transfers through Google Drive or Dropbox, Git, or if you're going to do it through USB. If you do it online, I would say it will save a lot of headache to get that stuff sorted and make folders for everyone, the audio, the programmers, final game, artists. Everyone has their own folder that they can mess around with, and make sure you don't accidentally delete anyone else's items. And the other point I want to make is you should name your files clearly for the team. It's just because it's a game jam doesn't mean you get to avoid filing properly. So you should make sure that the names of the files are correct. And an important point you might want to consider is, for example, let's go back to our character. When this rough sketch of the character was created, his name was character.png. When the static image of the character was created, his name was also character.png. This is so that the code doesn't need to be changed every time we change the file name. The code is referencing character.png to recall this little guy. So it's important that we always keep the file name the same. So I would say when you're giving the file to the programmers of the newest file, the iterative, the latest update, try to keep it the same name that has already been put into the game or the code. And usually that's whatever you chose at the start. However, if I would say it's also good if you're on your computer. iPad might be a bit difficult, but computer or your Google Drive or whatever, try to keep the older versions on hand for yourself and just in case if it's needed. But when you're giving the final file, pay attention to the file name so that there's no errors later down the line.
I was gonna say, just to brag on Jaren for a little bit,
You may.
that I think you did an excellent job both sizing the characters for Bubble Butt and then also like putting them into the game, because like I was the lead programmer on that, and like the work was so seamless. Like all I had to do was just like put, drag and drop it into the code, and then, or like drag and drop it into our folder in RenPy, and then like commit it to GitHub, and it was like beautiful, perfect.
I'm super happy to hear that, because another role as an artist on the team is you get to choose how much of a headache you will be to the programmer. So in this case, everything went smoothly because I was paying attention to the size of the files. I was paying attention to make sure all the characters were uniform in the game, and I was making sure that the file names were correct. However, when I worked with Josiah, I made sure the sprite sheets were wrong and all the characters were out of order, and then I changed things around, and then they were off by pixels, and my tiles didn't match up. So it's totally up to you how much of a headache you are to your programmer, and I sure hope Josiah's not listening.
Love that for you.
So your programmer will love you if you can create seamless creations. But if you're a starting artist, which I once was, and I was a once, a headache to Josiah, I'm sure, it's okay. You'll learn as you go. These are all things that are now so embedded in me, just like Control Alt Save 5 times to make sure that your file is saved. These things will also eventually stick with you the more games you make. Yeah, so for the final part, I'm going to talk about my personal process. So this is the Global Game Jam 2021, which our theme was Lost and Found back then. And you can see, so we started with, we created our teams, and we're sitting at our tables and we're discussing Lost and Found. And, you can I was sketching at the speed of sound, which is, again, my style as people are discussing ideas. We talked about, you can see an echolocation bat, there's crafting mechanics, there's something about a hamster, there's an echolocation dolphin, there's a bear. So whatever was put out there, I just made a visual representation so that we could see it really quickly. Uh, in the end, we decided on the echolocation dolphin. Again, these are just sketches to imagine what the game would look like. So I created, the format I've used is a widescreen because we knew this was going to be on PC. So I made it a widescreen to make it look like a computer screen. And I just started sketching ideas for the dolphin, or if the echolocation is triangles or something like that. So you can see down here, I've made like a maze type puzzle, or how big the screen will look. And then that is the large overall area. Again, there's no right way or wrong way to prototype. It's just what I was thinking at the time, how I'm going to do this. It was decided that we were going to use tiles. So I needed to create a tile sheet for this. Again, I'm not very versed in creating sprite sheets or tiles for games. So I remember sitting down and thinking, how do I break up a rock? How am I going to do that? And then I started to realize, oh, there's the body, and then there's the sides, which will be all different curves. And they had to line up. They all had to make sure that they lined up, or the body all could be tiled in different ways. The bonuses of tiling is it could be random and it will look different. All the rocks will look different, but they have to make sure they line up. So this was a new challenge for me. Also, animation. I've sat down and started to think about animation frame rates as well, frames. These are the tiles. You can see here I did some research into seaweed, how seaweed might flow underwater. And these are, they're not the right size or right shape. I've just put them into this this presentation, but they're not correct, the tile sizes. But I created a bunch of different tiles and seaweeds, and I remember the seaweed tiling was really difficult for me. So originally I started with this one vine, and the end point and the top point actually can line up. So they could be tiled forever upwards. From there, once I had that, I broke it down into 4 parts, and then I started to draw the different leaves and such. It might not look obvious, but some of these can actually tile with different areas. And it took a lot of trial and error, but I remember just playing around in Photoshop to make sure that the tiles would line up correctly. Again, I was a headache for Josiah for this, I remember. And then, yeah, you can see here the rock that I had created up here started to come to life here. So the body tiles, these are all different tiles. I wish I had the grid for this one, but all of these are different tiles. And then these are their own tiles as well that can be paired up or connected accordingly. And then on top of that, there are elements to hide some of the bad seams that I couldn't figure out for my time.
Those nasty seams.
Terrible seams. Again, there's no right way and wrong way to do this. If there's seams, there's seams. Cover them up, ignore them. Again, having something done is better than having something perfect. So you can see here, this is our first prototype with the tiles in. You can see I was trying different things with the seaweed. And then up here, this is, I believe, the final version of the game. I remember I couldn't animate the seaweed by myself. Josiah, my programmer, found a way to animate and sway the seaweed in the game engine. Again, if you communicate, you might find a workaround for some things that you might be lacking or you can't figure out how to do. And another thing, again, this is from the prototype. This side is the prototype, and then this is the final screen. It is important that you don't neglect. Not every game needs to have a start or an end screen, but try not to neglect simple things like how to play or including your team member's name in the game somewhere, or just the UI. Try to remember other elements that might just be static in the game. So in summary, anyone can make art for games. If you can make art, you can make art for games. If you can draw, you can make art for games. There's no set way to do it, no matter what anyone says. Communication with the team is essential. It's very important that you're talking with the team, not only the programmer. I understand I mainly focused on the programmer for technical, but you might want to discuss with the audio person, my character is going to jump, or the character is going to pull a silly face. Can we have some foley for that? Or can we have some audio quip for that? These are also very important. Audio can bring art to life. It's important that you talk to your audio people too. Your workflow will change depending on the art and the engine. I've given an extremely basic overview. It's not going to work for everyone. So try to understand that it's going to be different every time you make a game. Shoot for done, not perfection. I hope I've nailed that in for you today. I promise you, I know it might feel bad that you're getting the worst version of your art in, but I promise you at the end of the jam, after 48 hours, there's nothing more impressive or a great feeling than getting up on the podium and showing your unfinished game to the class, rather than saying, we had an idea, but we couldn't get it executable or we couldn't get it running. Yes, create an asset list. I hope I've also nailed that in. It's very important you understand the scope of your weekend and what you're going to be making. Categorize your asset list, so important items get done first, less important things get done later. Some things will get cut, some things will be reused, and some things will get some polish or animation. Reuse assets, especially in 3D. I mean, 2D you can as well, but 3D, make a tree and rotate that tree 100 times. And remember, you are the designer. Don't neglect game logo. Don't neglect putting in your team members' names visually somewhere. Don't forget that towards the last rush of submitting the video, the game for the Global Game Jam, you might be in charge of creating the submission screenshots or promotional visuals for the game. So you, as the designer, that might fall on you as well. Thanks for listening.
Yay!
Thank you.
This was great. I learned a lot actually. Yeah, I think that coming from a fine art background, I didn't really think too in the past. I didn't really think too deeply about image sizes and sizing, and I have in the past tended to work with programmers who are very sweet on me, and so they're like, "Oh yeah, don't worry about it." But the thing is like, you know, wanting to do better, I think showing that process from programmer block to like rough character to yes, yes, like I think this is really helpful to like look at this and say like yes, this is the process that needs to be followed really for like any game, so that you're not spending so much time on like this one finished polished thing that like may or may not actually fit in the game because you got the dimensions wrong.
Yeah, it is one of those. It's incredibly every step you should probably be talking or being like, look what I made to your programmer, because the programmer is going to be like, we're not doing that. Or, like that's not going in, or uh, and vice versa. My biggest I don't want to say my pet peeve, but my biggest moment where I'm looking or judging is I've had programmers in the past who'll take my art and just stretch it, and I'm like, no, no, he's wide. He shouldn't be that wide. So they didn't tell me, can you make a border around him? Or they don't care sometimes. Not all programmers, but they don't care. They'll just stretch it. So these are things that you should be paying attention to or communicating. Sorry.
Yeah, no, excellent.
Yeah.
I also wanted to open it up to the chat if anybody in the chat has questions
Please.
um, for Jaren about um, the art for jams, collaboration with teams, exporting things in the right way. Please feel free to drop them in the chat while I chat Jaren up. There's one comment I can vouch for some from personal experience, and I learned more from lessons you learned that I hadn't even imagined yet.
Oh, I'm glad.
Oh, a surprising number of people don't seem to notice or care about aspect ratio.
Don't worry, me neither. I feel like I've been chastised into learning. Like I've learned through programmers being like, "Nuh-uh," and I'm like, "Yaha, I made it. Put it in." They're like, "Nope, it doesn't go in like that." I'm like, "Ah." So back to the drawing board.
Yeah. Uh, um, what else? Like, yeah, that I think that like you have been doing jams for like longer than most people maybe in this chat have been doing jams for.
Wow.
So I am curious, like, what got you started on jams and what keeps you going on doing game jams?
I did my first game jam when I was still a university student, studying games. So it was I think it was very impactful for me actually, making a game in such a short time. Because it's something we're studying, but it's not something we're actually doing in the class. We're just studying elements of it. So to actually say, this is a block of time and we're going to make something in that time. And it was my friends at the time. It was my classmates. So, we made something. I believe the theme back in 2012 or 2011, it was love. So I still have, that's the account I still use for Global Game Jam, but the game doesn't run anymore.
Wow.
But I remember that time, my 3D was not very good, and the other artist was good at 3D, and I was good at 2D, and I was really nervous because I was like, I'm not going to be able to make anything nice for this, or I'm going to be the weak link as an artist, I thought. And I remember we had two programmers, and we decided, you know what, we're going to make a 3D and 2D game. So we combined it. And I'm very grateful that they saw my limitations, and they didn't think of it as limitation. They found a way to make both of our 3D and 2D stand out, which was really, I think, really motivational for me at the time.
Yeah.
And to see something come together at the end of it was a stressful 2 days. And as a university student, and I don't recommend this, and we don't allow this at our jam site. You can't stay all night. But for us, we were up 48 hours making this game. So at the end, to see something executable and playable for the first time in my life was very cool, I thought.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Um, mhm.
I have another question in the chat.
Please.
At this point, do you think you have a scrapyard of unused ideas that you've just kept around just in case?
Oh, yeah, I do. Um, I have a lot of ideas that have gone nowhere. And because I'm an artist who sketches a lot of them before abandoning them, once in a while I'll come across. When I was making this presentation, I was going through my old files of art and I came across a lot of ideas or failed prototypes um, that are unfortunate, that still live rent free in my head. So, if you ever I just want to put it out there for chat. Frog Tinder is my idea. You're swiping on frogs and dating frogs. I came up with that.
Oh,
Don't
I
stop
love
me.
that.
But yeah, that's there's a lot of ideas that don't get realized, and I think that's true for most creatives, writers, artists. A lot of your ideas don't see the day of light, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. Yeah, you're wanting me like I'm like right outside of camera. There's a like an entire book of like all of these ideas that I have had in scrap
Uh,
since I was like maybe 16 or 17. They're very bad. Some of them are very bad. Some of them are good. But
yeah.
I was like, oh man, Jaren should see this. To like just to like we should browse each other's like little
Oh, I'm
well
coming over. I'll
in
show you my frog Tinder.
that's right. Actually, in cartooning, which is the like where I studied,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that is called the morgue. It's where
Oh,
you put it on ice, right?
oh, I didn't know. That's a great term for it.
Yeah,
I'm glad it's on ice and not dead because a lot of ideas they come and go, and I do dwell on them, but it comes to my limitations as I'm not a programmer, so there's a lot of limitations in what I can create for video games in that sense.
yeah. Also, good for like game jams and stuff. Just to find programmers to be like, hey, here's a thought that's rolling around my head. What do you think?
That's not a bad idea. I was thinking, how do I rope in some programmers recently?
I
So
think
that's not a bad.
I think you could sell Josiah on Frog Tinder.
I think I might have shown him Frog Tinder actually. I think we worked on that one for a little while. I think he made the prototype for it,
Love
the
it.
swiping mechanism.
I
Yeah.
I would I would just do it in a website. I just feel like a responsive website where people could just get on their phones and just swipe on those frogs.
Hmm. Are we bringing it off ice? Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you. Any other questions from chat? I can't see chat, so I'm just wondering.
No questions that I see. But I am curious where we can find you online.
Ooh. You can find me if you can find me at my portfolio first of all.
Yeah.
So you can find me at jarenganesh.com, which is me. And it has all my works and arts on it. And you can also find me on, I mean, I'm not using Twitter so much these days, but I believe my blue sky is the same as my name. It might have the word art, it might have art at the end of it.
Let me see.
Um,
Yeah, I was gonna say at this time, like at this point, I'm off the internet.
yeah, unfortunately, it's before I would just say Twitter, but even Blue Sky, I'm not using it too much these days. So if if you really want to contact me, my website is my name, and I have my email up there. I You can also search me on Instagram if you like. But it's just mainly my art and my life. But I would say this is probably the easiest way to get in touch with me because I will check my emails.
Cool.
Mhm.
Awesome. Oh, thank you so much, Jaren, for
Thank you for
sharing.
having me. I was a bit nervous, but I hope it wasn't too basic and I hope it wasn't too complex. I hope it gives you encouragement to create something and just have fun.
Yes. Oh, hold on. Let me put in Jaren's blue sky.
Oh, go ahead.
Um, No, it was great, and some of the people I like know personally in the chat who have been artists for like a really long time. Some of
Mhm.
them game artists, and I think we all got something. It's just like it's like as an artist, I feel like I also really benefit from looking at other artists' process and like think about what other artists are thinking because sometimes like I learn things that I just like would coast over in my workflow, and now I'm like, oh yeah, that's such a great thing to add.
Oh, I'm really happy to hear that. Yeah, I was really worried that I don't know everything. You know, I've done this and scrapped around as an artist for a long time, but again, there's no right way or wrong way to do it. But if I've introduced something you haven't thought about before, I'm really happy to hear that. Honestly,
Yeah,
yay! Thank you.
yeah. No, thank you, and thank you for everybody who joined.
Thank you,
We are
everyone.
gonna close it up, but we'll see everybody next weekend. And if you're watching the recording, then it's gone. You missed it.
Eh,
Sorry.
too bad.
Next year or the year after that.
Yeah, you missed your chance, kids. I'm looking forward to meeting you all on Friday. I'm sure I know some of you. So, if you have any questions at the site about art, about this, about traditional or analog art, let me know.
Yes. And Jaron will be there waiting for you.
You.
You. All right.